Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today, let's make a rain colander spiral. We've had quite a bit of rain recently, and so I decided that I would just go ahead and utilize that rain and use it instead of using ice. I'm starting with a damp shirt, and I'm going to go ahead and spiral it. So I've placed the shirt with the front side of the shirt down, so the back side is what you see facing me. I normally end up with the prettier spiral or the prettier folds on whatever side of the shirt is facing the table, so I want that to be the front of my shirt. I'm going to use a washable marker and make a mark about where I'd like to start the spiral, and for me I like to do that about level with the armpit of the shirt. Then I'm using a pair of locking tweezers that have a coating on the very ends of them so that they won't damage the fabric. I'm going to lock those onto that mark that I made on the shirt, and then over the top I'm going to place a microwavable splatter guard. And mine has got a hole in the middle, so I'm going to stick those over those tweezers, and then as I turn the tweezers, I'm going to use my other hand to form extra folds in the shirt. Placing the flat side of that microwavable splatter guard over the top of the shirt is going to help to keep the folds on this side of the shirt about the same height too as I spiral the shirt. Once I have the shirt mostly spiraled, I'm going to take the splatter guard off of the shirt, kind of add a few additional folds in the shirt, straighten some of the folds. Then I'm going to take the locking tweezers off of the shirt, and I have a metal shelf. I'm going to place that right at the edge of my table and slide my spiral onto the shelf. So right now you're still seeing the back of the shirt. I'm going to place a colander over the top of the shirt, right in the middle of the spiral. Then I'm going to place another shelf over the top and just flip the whole thing upside down so that now what you're seeing is the front side of the shirt, which is on top. So I have a colander underneath, the front side of the shirt is on top, and that's where I'm going to apply the dye. For this shirt, I've chosen some blue and teal colors from Dye Spin. Before I started applying the dye, I divided my shirt using a washable marker. I basically drew an X going through the center of the spiral, making 4 sections. On the very first line, I applied blue linen from Dye Spin. Then I've also chosen another primarily blue color called Wild Chicory from Dye Spin, which I'm going to place on the opposite line. The other 2 lines, I'm going to place teal colors. On one, I'm using teal blue, and on the other, teal green. Those are also Dye Spin colors as well. So I was trying to alternate like a blue, a blue, and a teal. I'm only placing a line of the color right on the line that I drew. I'm not going to take the dye all the way down to the outer edges of the shirt, and I'm not going to place a really wide line. I want to leave plenty of white on the shirt so that the dye has space to move. I also don't mind on this design if I end up with a little bit of white left. I think these colors would look really pretty with some white area of the shirt still showing. Then over the top of the dye, I'm going to place an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash. It's just started to sprinkle outside, so I'm going to take this shelf that I have the shirt and the colander on top of, and I'm going to take it outside and place it on a shelving rack that I keep outside that I use for gravity dyes. The rain was going pretty well there for a while, and then it totally stopped. But it started up a few hours later, and it started raining pretty hard. I think it rained probably about 2 inches. So I left the shirt out all throughout the rain, and when the rain stopped, I took the shirt, placed it down inside of a container. I placed the entire rack that it's on, the colander, everything, just down inside of a plastic tote, put the lid on the container, and then left it outside in the heat and allowed it to process. I left it for probably about 48 hours before I rinsed it out. So to rinse it, I started rinsing in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing in hot water to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. I went ahead and took the shirt off of the colander, and instead of just rinsing it for a really long time, I decided to soak it. Blues tend to be one of the hardest colors for me to get fully rinsed out. So I thought I would just go ahead and soak the shirt and try to get the excess rinsed out that way. So to soak the shirt, I ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added some Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the shirt inside, and just allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I placed the shirt along with some Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed the shirt, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one ended up looking really cool. I really like the fact that there is an intensity of color like right in the center where I place the dye, and then it just kind of blends out into the outer edges of the shirt. I think that's an interesting effect, almost kind of like if you're looking at the eye of a hurricane. That's what it keeps reminding me of. I really love the way the colors flow together too, how they just flow down the shirt. And I like that little pop of teal. You know, I used a blue teal and I used a green teal. And I was a little concerned that the blue teal would be too much blue and it wouldn't actually look teal. But I think it does. And I do think it really adds to the shirt. I, of course, love the dye flow. I love the dye flow on the colander dyes, gravity dyes, anything like this. And this is kind of a combination of the two. It was a colander dye, but I did it outside and used the rain. So it's a totally organic effect on this shirt. I had no idea what I was going to end up with. And in the beginning, I was a little concerned I was not going to get enough rain. You know, it started raining for a little bit and then it quit. And then it started again, but I kept checking on the shirt and I just kept thinking, you know, am I going to get enough rain to actually get this dye out to the outer edges? And I was so happy that it rained hard enough and long enough that the dye could move and flow because I think it ended up being really pretty. I did end up with a few speckles from the teal green and a few other speckles on the shirt. But you know, that is not uncommon whenever I do a shirt outside. The dye just has more of a tendency to either blow around, or in this case, that may have just been an area of the shirt that may not have gotten as much of the rain. The speckles really just seemed to be on the front of the shirt, so I think they were probably just areas of the dye that didn't get dissolved as well as the rest of the dye did. I did move my shelving unit that I normally do gravity dyes on, that I placed this shirt on. I moved it out from underneath the trees so that the trees weren't obstructing the rain and it was able to get a good, hard, steady rain on top of the shirt. So overall, I'm really happy with this rain dye. I think it turned out looking really pretty and I like the organic feel of it. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.